Greenland. It's massive, frozen, remote, home to less than 60,000 people, most of them Inuit. And yet, in 2019, the President of the United States asked to buy it. The world laughed. Late-night hosts mocked the idea. But the Pentagon didn't laugh. China didn't laugh. And Russia? Russia was already preparing for war in the Arctic. Because Greenland isn't just some icy island. It's one of the most strategically important territories on Earth. Militarily, economically, ecologically, and the world's great powers want it before it melts. This is the story of why Greenland may shape the 21st century, and why what happens here won't stay here. On a map, Greenland looks enormous. That's not entirely accurate. It's a distortion from the Mercator projection, but still, it's big. Really big. Greenland is the largest island in the world, not considered a continent. It's 4 times the size of California, and bigger than Germany, France, and Spain combined. Yet it has fewer people than a mid-sized American town. 80% of the island is covered in ice. There are no highways connecting the towns. Much of the interior is completely uninhabitable. So how can such an empty place matter so much? Because Greenland's emptiness is valuable. It gives room for bases, for mining, for control. It gives access to the Arctic, to North America, to Europe. And it gives something else, an early warning of global change. Let's zoom out. Greenland sits between North America and Europe, with direct access to the Arctic Ocean. During the Cold War, this was critical. It still is. The U.S. operates Thule Air Base, the northernmost military base on the planet. Built in the 1950s, it serves as part of America's early missile warning system. It hosts radar stations that monitor ballistic threats, and it sits close to the shortest route between Russia and the U.S. over the Arctic. If war ever broke out between superpowers, missiles would fly over Greenland. That makes it not just a bystander, but a battlefield, a stepping stone, or a shield. And that's just the military angle. Greenland is melting. The ice sheet that covers most of the island is losing billions of tons of mass every year. If it fully melts, global sea levels could rise by 7 meters, flooding cities around the world. But from a geopolitical view, the melting ice does something else. It opens up access, new coastlines, new land, new opportunities, more importantly, new shipping routes. As the Arctic warms, traditional sea lanes could shift north. The so-called Arctic Silk Road could cut travel times between Asia and Europe. And the powers who control Arctic waters and nearby land could profit immensely. This puts Greenland at the crossroads of the future, not because it's warm, but because the rest of the world is. What lies under Greenland's ice? We don't fully know, but what we do know is very tempting. Rare earth elements, zinc, copper, uranium, iron, oil, natural gas, and trillions of gallons of fresh water. The global demand for rare earths, especially for green tech and military hardware, is exploding. And countries like China already dominate global supply. Greenland offers a potential alternative, one that the West would love to control. In fact, in 2021, Greenland's government banned uranium mining. Why? Because China had invested heavily in a rare earth project there. It sparked fears of Beijing gaining too much influence. The election turned into a referendum on foreign control, and the pro-mining party lost. Even in tiny Greenland, geopolitics is reshaping the map. In 2019, President Trump floated the idea of buying Greenland from Denmark. It wasn't the first time. The U.S. offered to buy it in 1867 and again in 1946 for $100 million in gold. Both times, Denmark said no. But in 2019, the offer caused international uproar. Greenland's government responded bluntly, "We're not for sale." Behind the scenes, though, everyone understood why the offer was made. Because China was already stepping in. Beijing offered to build airports, invest in mining, and set up research outposts. The U.S. blocked those efforts. In 2020, it opened its first consulate in Greenland since World War II. Meanwhile, Russia has militarized the Arctic at an unprecedented scale. New airfields, new missile systems, new icebreakers. This isn't just posturing, it's positioning. And Greenland is one of the main prizes. Greenland is an autonomous territory of Denmark. It governs itself in almost all internal matters. But Denmark handles defense and foreign policy. And that relationship is complicated. Greenlandic politicians have long debated full independence. Polls show that most citizens support it, but only if it's economically viable. Right now, Denmark provides heavy subsidies, about 20% of Greenland's GDP. Cutting that off would hurt, but mining and resource development could change the equation. Here's the twist. If Greenland ever declared independence, it would need international recognition, and whichever powers helped make it viable, through trade, investment, or protection, would earn massive influence. The question becomes, who gets there first? The West, or someone else? Think of the Arctic like the Middle East, but colder, rich in resources, poor in population, ripe for geopolitical contest. Already, over 90 billion barrels of oil are estimated to lie beneath Arctic waters, and the melting ice is making them accessible. Countries with Arctic coastlines, Canada, Norway, Russia, the U.S., and Denmark via Greenland, are making overlapping claims. Undersea ridges, continental shelves. It's a legal nightmare and a strategic race. Russia has planted a flag on the Arctic seabed. China calls itself a near-Arctic state, despite being nowhere near it. And the U.S. is expanding its presence in Alaska and Greenland. If there's going to be a 21st century version of the scramble for Africa, it might be happening now, in slow motion, on melting ice. But while the world sees opportunity, locals in Greenland see something else: danger and difficult choices. Climate change is hitting Greenland hard. Traditional hunting routes are disappearing. Fishing stocks are shifting. Entire villages may become uninhabitable. At the same time, outside companies are promising wealth, if only the locals say yes. Yes to mining. Yes to drilling. Yes to sacrificing the land. Greenland's Inuit population is caught between protecting their way of life and securing a future in a warming, resource-hungry world. It's not a simple choice, because the global fight over Greenland isn't just about who gets the resources, it's about who makes the decisions. And so far, it's rarely been the people who actually live there. Greenland is melting, politically, economically, literally. It sits at the center of the world's next great power struggle, not because of what it is today, but because of what it might be tomorrow. A new shipping hub, a rare earth superpower, a military forward base, a newly independent nation, or a climate disaster zone, maybe all at once. Whatever happens, the rest of the world won't be able to ignore it, because Greenland's future isn't just Greenland's. It's all of ours. We usually think about oil, gas, or rare earths. But there's one resource Greenland has in unimaginable quantity, and almost no one's talking about it: fresh water. The island's ice sheet stores over 2.8 million cubic kilometers of frozen fresh water. That's roughly 10% of all the fresh water on Earth. As climate change accelerates and water scarcity spreads, especially in Asia, Africa, and even parts of the U.S., this white gold becomes incredibly valuable. And here's the twist. As Greenland melts, it releases massive volumes of fresh water into the ocean, uncaptured, unused, wasted. Some researchers and governments have begun asking, could this water be harvested, collected, even exported? Floating desalination plants, iceberg towing, Arctic pipelines. These ideas sound like science fiction, but they're already in early-stage planning. In the 21st century, wars might be fought over water, and Greenland may become one of the last places with more than enough. Every continent has its own legal framework, but the Arctic? It's still largely up for debate. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea governs most ocean territory, but no one fully agrees on Arctic boundaries. Russia, for example, claims vast underwater ridges extending from Siberia. Canada disputes that. Denmark disputes both. China, meanwhile, calls for the Arctic to be open to all, much like Antarctica. The U.S. hasn't even ratified the UN Convention. So what happens when the sea ice disappears and these frozen boundaries become navigable? Who will enforce the rules? Who will own the shipping lanes? Who gets to drill, to fish, to station military assets? Greenland sits in the heart of this legal chaos, not just geographically, but symbolically. Whichever bloc dominates Greenland might end up shaping the entire Arctic legal order. And if we've learned anything from history, when rules are unclear, power fills the gap. If you made it this far, you already know more about Greenland than 99% of the world, and now you understand why an empty island matters more than most capitals. But Greenland is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The Arctic, the climate, the collapse of old empires, the rise of new ones. None of these stories exist in isolation. They're part of a bigger shift, a colder frontier, a hotter competition. If you want to understand how the future is being carved from melting ice and invisible treaties, subscribe. Because we uncover the hidden conflicts, fragile systems, and untold power games that shape our planet. And sometimes, the most important wars aren't fought with guns. They're fought with maps. This was Why Everyone Wants Greenland. See you in the next chapter.